Distinguished guests and colleagues, my name is Jennifer Glennie, and it's my pleasure on behalf of the Siyaphumelela initiative to welcome you to the second Siyaphumelela conference. I do this in my capacity as the director of Saide, where Saide is an NGO whose task is to coordinate this amazing initiative. It brings together 5 universities in strictly alphabetic order: Durban University of Technology, Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, University of Free State, University of Pretoria, and WITS, who have pledged to work together separately and together to systematically address issues around student success. This initiative also provides extraordinary opportunities for the sharing of all that is learnt at the 5 universities and from international experience with other universities through our website, which I hope you will go onto at some stage, through conferences and workshops such as we had yesterday and today, and as well through special colloquia and sometimes a wonderful study visit to the USA, where we would like to invite people who think that they would benefit from such a study visit to be in touch with us at some stage. It usually includes a visit to Achieving the Dream conference, but in addition, other exciting initiatives. I'd like to give a special welcome to our overseas guests. We are particularly grateful to you for coming halfway across the world, skipping over many, many time zones to get here, and in some cases then getting turned away by your hotel when you got here. Bill will introduce you all shortly, but it meanwhile is my pleasure to introduce the members of the Kresge Foundation who are here. We are delighted to welcome Ari Simon, who is the Deputy President. I think he's somewhere in the back. There we go. Bill Moses, who is the Director of Education at the Kresge Foundation, who's joining me on the front here, and Caroline Altman-Smith, who's his deputy. I think we can safely say that without you, this initiative would not be in place. And in particular, I'd like to pay tribute to you, Bill. I know that for many years, you traipsed across the country talking to vice-chancellors together with the higher education sector in trying to construct this initiative, and I think it is, we can see, very timeous. I think we can almost count you as a South African, the amount of time that you like to visit us here, so welcome. I'd also like to, Bill is then going to welcome the other guests from overseas, so I'm not going to go into that at the moment. But I would like to welcome all the South African guests. We are gratified by the turnout. The notion of student success is clearly resonating with the university sector. Last year we aimed, it was our first conference, we aimed at 40 delegates. We got 100. This year we planned 120, and we got registrations for about 170 applications. We then had to start turning away people. So if you hear some grumpy voices, that's because we turned them away. And we've ended up with 150 delegates. We're proud to say that either 23 or 24, I've lost count, universities are represented here. We have delegates from across the university: VCs, DVCs, deans, head of teaching and learning units, institutional researchers, academics, and of course, very importantly, students. And we also have representatives here of the Department of Higher Education and Training, of the CHE, and of Universities South Africa, as well as the ministerial task team that is looking at funding matters. So we are really delighted by the number of delegates and the diversity of the delegates that are here. We're aware of how busy you are in these tumultuous times, not only here but across the world, and are delighted that you anticipated that it would be worthwhile your coming here, and we really trust that it will be so. It's only 13 months since our inaugural conference last year. Much has changed. Fees Must Fall has had, and will continue to have, a dramatic impact on the university sector. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that. I think we have all learnt, and we are all learning a great deal in this time about how to work productively in this sector. Our conference theme is about promising practices towards systemic interventions for student success. It has been shaped in many ways, and this is really a collaborative effort. We had great feedback from last year's conference, so please give us feedback on this one so we can take it into account. The Siyaphumelela Advisory Committee gave us advice, and then we had this productive visit of about 20 or so South African delegates who spent a week in Atlanta visiting Georgia State, of whom you'll hear a great deal today, participating in the Achieving the Dream conference, trailing through the Human Rights Museum in Atlanta, and then participating in an excellent debriefing session before we returned to South Africa. At this debriefing, we forged ideas for this conference, and then we turned it into a draft program. We have a very productive convening group of all the 5 universities in South Africa. They engaged with us on the program, and we've resulted in what we have today. So it is a communal effort, so it's not only our fault if you don't like it. Yesterday we offered 3 workshops and were amazed by the response. Over 70% of conference delegates participated in a full day of activity. The topics were integrating and building our data for student success, effective academic advising informed by data analytics, and systemic approaches to student success, an institutional approach. This was organized in association with the Quality Enhancement Program of the CHE. The conference carries forward these 3 topics, and we are trying to make the link between the workshop and the conference so that you'll hear a little bit, if you missed the conference, as workshops, what happened in those workshops. But it also attempts to set the national scene, which is what we are going to be doing in the first session today, to draw on international and local experiences in overcoming socio-cultural challenges to student success. And then obviously there's a special focus on sharing experiences of South African universities, both through plenary sessions, where the Siyaphumelela institutions will highlight their work, but also through parallel sessions, where there will be some 16 presentations from different university practices. Again, these presentations are clustered around issues such as supporting success in student learning through data analytics, extending our understanding of factors in student success, exploring analytics for decision making, and then importantly, how we build a community of practice for student success. Siyaphumelela also emphasizes the role of leadership, and so this morning, but just before the cocktail party, as an enticement to get to the cocktail party, we have a panel with Vice Chancellors and Deputy Vice Chancellors asking them about how they are leading this initiative at their different institutions. And then we will tomorrow conclude the conference with USA and South African perspectives on building communities around student success. The emphasis throughout is on sharing and building on each other's experiences. You have a paper program, but we also have an amazing app. Alan, would you just come quickly? So if you haven't downloaded this app on your smartphone, you do need a smartphone, we're aware of that. But it works on the website in the same way.
Thank you, Jenny, and good morning, everyone. Just to highlight the components, you can get this from the website, from our website very easily. It is the same code that is used throughout the system, so we've been clever not to code every device that we want to use. But the easiest way to look at the program is to select the program, and there are 3 choices at the top. So the first one went for yesterday's workshop, so we need to go to today's workshop, and it is then available for you to go through. But what is important to have a look at this point is to see that at the end of each session, there's a little button that says rate. We really would like you to use either the app or the website to rate the conference components so that we can learn from these comments that you might like to make. Furthermore, with our international and keynote speakers, you may also find short biographies of the individuals. So thank you, Tim, for allowing me to show your biography. Also, the attendees, there's a list. You can find anybody there, but I want to go back to the speaker list, because here, Bridget, may I use your itinerary? The biography is here, but even more importantly, if anybody wants to make contact with somebody, there is a contact form. You don't actually get their email addresses. You fill this form in, and we will send the email at the back end to the person saying that somebody would like to talk to you with your email attached to it. So nobody can get anybody's emails from the system because it is not public. It's all working on the server. And the rest of it is just about the social media, which is up over there, and the map and our partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So, as I made clear, this conference has been made possible by the Kresge Foundation, so it's entirely fitting that I should ask Bill Moses, I think who's known to many, many of you in this room, to welcome you and to introduce our overseas guests. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Jenny. I'd also like to thank all of you to the Siyaphumelela conference, the second one that we've had. We are delighted to have 150 of you here to talk about data analytics for student success. The Kresge Foundation promotes opportunity for low-income people in cities. In education, we promote post-secondary access and success for low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented students in both the United States and in South Africa. We have three main strategies: pathways to and through university, building the capacity of the institutions that serve our students, and also trying to encourage what we call urban higher education ecosystems to get communities to work with universities and colleges to promote post-secondary access and success. I'm really excited about this year's conference. As Jenny explained, Saide has been working feverishly to try to put this all together, and they've got some amazing sessions. I think you'll be really excited and delighted today. And I'd really like to thank all of you for making the trip to Durban to join us today. I think this is the room full of people who really want to see South Africa improve its student outcomes, so thank you. I'd also like to make a special thanks to our American visitors who've come, as Jenny said, from a very, very far away to join us for many, many days. Particularly, I want to thank Tim Rennick and Allison Calhoun-Brown from Georgia State University. I want to thank Jan Liddon from Achieving the Dream, Bridget Burns from University Innovation Alliance, and Sean Harper from the University of Pennsylvania. They're going to be, some of them have done workshops already, and they'll also be in sessions. I highly encourage you to think about attending their sessions. It's really quite impressive what they're going to talk about, and I think they're excited also to hear from you about what you're doing in South Africa. I'd also like to thank Caroline Altman-Smith and R.A. Simon, my colleagues from the Kresge Foundation, for joining us too. And of course, I have to thank the Siyaphumelela Advisory Committee and all the hard work they do in providing the vision for this work and for this initiative. And most notably, I need to thank Saide. I need to, of course, Fatima, Alan, Ephraim, and absolutely Jenny for putting this all together. I think they're going to be taking a holiday next week, probably after this. So thank you. Kresge has been in South Africa, or made grants in South Africa since 1989, but we didn't really become proactively involved in South Africa until 2006, about 10 years ago. Now, over the last 2 decades, I know everyone in this room knows that higher education has changed tremendously. And if you think about it, I think the most notable figure is the more than doubling of enrollment in South Africa to more than 1 million students, which is really a remarkable accomplishment for our higher education system anywhere. And given the kind of challenges that South Africa has had to endure, it's particularly remarkable that you've been able to pull this off. I think even more exciting is how you've changed the demographics of enrollment. So just last week, I think, or in the last couple of weeks, Stats SA announced that about 69% of all students in South African universities were Black. It's not quite where we want it to be, doesn't quite reflect the demographics of the country, but it is a really remarkable improvement. That said, I don't think I need to remind people in this room that not everything has gone perfectly well. And I think one of the bigger challenges is participation. Only about 16% of all South Africans end up going to university. It's a 16% rate, which is the best in Africa, but compared to the United States and other developed countries where you might see 60 or 70% enrollment in post-secondary education, it's got a long way to go. I think another one is that participation rate is still strongly aligned with race. So whereas only about 60% of all whites are attending post-secondary education, only about 12% of Black students are participating in post-secondary education. I think the most challenging figure is in fact the attainment rate. The BA rate is about 21% for whites, but it's only about 2% for Blacks. And so there's a long way to go, obviously, to improve that. And that is very much a legacy of your history. And that really brings us to why Kresge supports Siyaphumelela. After decades of universities focusing lots of attention, lots of staff, lots of resources to academic development, we haven't necessarily seen the kind of outcomes we'd like to see. And the big question is really, if you had one rand, where would you put that rand? What are the most effective interventions for students? And we're trying to help figure that out. And that's really where this comes from. Now, a lot of people will say this is about student preparation, and that obviously is part of it. But we're not sure that student preparation is the entire answer. I think, one of the things that we look at is that the challenges that universities pose to students are not only a function of preparation. Students of all backgrounds have changed over the last couple of decades, both here in South Africa and also in the United States. We've often asked, quite appropriately, that students change when they get to a campus. This is the time of maturing into adulthood, of being more engaged in a more rigorous way in academic information. But the question then becomes, I think when you look at the way students have changed in the last 25 years, is how can universities change to better serve students? And this is one of the things we're looking at with the Siyaphumelela initiative. What are the institutional, bureaucratic, academic, curricular, student support, and other practices that may be creating barriers to student success on campuses? And what can institutions do to identify those barriers and address them to enhance student success? That's where the data comes in. So it's not enough just to rely on gut instinct, and in fact, that's what you would have had to rely on 10 or 20 years ago. But today we can really look at big data. We can take advantage of technology to really hone in on what's going on a campus. Where are students actually failing? When are they failing? And that's really what we're asking with the big data, to build that capacity to do that. But just getting the data and just looking at the data isn't enough. What's really even more important is to take a closer look, become more analytical. I spoke to a former head of Stats SA a couple of days ago, and he said having data means nothing until it's digested into intelligent information analysis. That's where we identify why students are failing. And then once you've identified why they're failing, you can begin to pinpoint what interventions are most effective at making sure that students succeed. Are students really failing because of preparation, or is it related to how financial aid is distributed? Are course sequences outdated? Is there a way to use technology to connect students to material or to assess whether students have mastered material? Are there campus practices that inadvertently alienate students? Are there safe places for students to study? Is transit to the university reliable and safe itself? Do students not have enough to eat? Is there effective classroom learning and teaching? There are a million different questions you can be asking to see why students aren't succeeding. In short, data is a means, not an ends to student success. What excites me most about this work, though, is that we're seeing really wonderful examples around the world of students beginning to benefit from this kind of data analytics and the application of interventions that respond directly to the data that universities are uncovering. You're going to hear some great things from Georgia State about what they're doing, from Achieving the Dream, from examples the University of Pennsylvania can look at, and the University Innovation Alliance. You're also going to hear of some great things going on in South Africa, too. So once again, I want to thank all of you for joining us at Siyaphumelela, and have a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We have a little bit of housekeeping before we move on to our next session. And so those people who are presenting, may we ask that you, in the break before the session where you will be presenting, if you go to the room that is on your program, and there will be somebody to assist you technically to upload your presentation. So the session, the break before your session, if you'd go to those rooms. The rooms, there's this one is one, the Prince of Wales, and then there's one on the 4th floor, which is just above here. And there is also one next door where Jan Liddon will be having her workshop during the parallel sessions today. I have a couple of other things. One is that there was a device that was left here yesterday. If you think it's your device, I have it. And then there is also a blue shawl at the entrance that somebody left here today, if you would like to claim that as well. So I'd now like to move into our first session, and we are delighted to have a very wonderful panel. They are each going to be making presentations to be setting the scene for us. And it's both about the challenges experienced in the sector and about some of the systemic responses that are being developed by the sector. And so if I could make sure that members are here, Professor Ahmed Bauer, if you'd like to come to the front, please. If you'd all like to come to the front, please. Professor Ahmed Bauer is now the CEO of Universities South Africa. Then the SRC president from the University of Venda. Mashudu, are you here? Yes, there we go. And then we are followed by Diane Parker, who all of you will know is the Deputy Director General of Higher Education. And we're delighted also to welcome Sizwe Nkosana, who's on the Minister's task team, and will be telling us about what is happening as far as student funding is concerned and some of the amazing proposals that seem to be developing. So, thank you.